Will the Saints exceed expectations and win the division in 2023? ESPN 104.5, T-Bob, and Jacob Hester. I wanted to make this video for one reason. The confusion between how a team is, like from local media or even national media, and then Vegas continues to blow my mind. Vegas is usually pretty smart and pretty right when it comes to who the best teams are, ranking the teams, things like that. The analytics and the things that they can put into their research to show you who they think are the best teams is second to none, okay? So the question here, will the Saints exceed the expectations and win the division? So the headline is making it sound like winning the division would be a surprise, right? If the Saints don't win the division, it will be one of the biggest failures in the organization in the last 10 years. And that sounds crazy because the Saints were not great last year. But the division, the NFC South, besides the Saints, those are probably the three of the five worst teams in the NFL. Think about the worst teams in the NFL right now. Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Atlanta have to be in the conversation. I would rank them, I would say Atlanta is probably the best of the three, then Carolina, because maybe Bryce Young is good. But Tampa Bay, they're going to be bad. They're going to be real bad. And to show you what I mean here, let's go to Caesars Sportsbook, one of my favorite sportsbooks, probably my favorite sportsbook, and let's look at what they think. So this is the future odds for the Super Bowl. To win the Super Bowl, the Saints, let's just look at the NFC. All right, so we have KC is AFC, Frisco's NFC, Philly's NFC, Dallas is NFC, and then the Saints. I didn't miss any, right? Oh, yeah, and Detroit. And Detroit. So Detroit is NFC, and then the Saints. So let's do this again. So San Francisco, Philadelphia, Dallas, Detroit, and the Saints. So Caesars has the Saints as the fifth best team in the NFC. The fifth, okay? So by their estimations, the Saints should be talking about an NFC championship. They should be one of those handful of teams that are competing at the end. They're one of the five best teams in the NFC. Let's look where Atlanta, Carolina, and Tampa are. Look at this. They're down here underneath the Rams. They're underneath Pittsburgh, underneath Chicago. Okay? Houston and Arizona is who Caesars thinks are the two worst teams in the NFL. Then Indy, Tennessee, Washington, Tampa, Carolina, and Atlanta. All right? So obviously, just looking at that, we should certainly win the division. They do have the division winners, right? So let's look at the NFC South. The Saints are the favorite to win the NFC South. A big favorite, might I add. The Saints to win the NFC South is almost the same as the Chiefs to win their division. All right? The Saints are far and away the favorite. So the idea that it would be exceeding expectations for the Saints to do that is insane to me. Now let's go ahead. Now that I've said my piece, let's see what they have to say about it.
So Connor Orr from Sports Illustrated came out with his post-draft NFL power rankings. And, of course, his Eagles won, Chiefs 2, because why wouldn't you? Bengals 3, Bills 4, Niners 5. All makes sense thus far. He has the New York Jets at 6. I don't know about that, boys. How do we feel about that? That feels a little trumped up. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers maybe can't be that guy, but, like, and whatever. They're
The Colts at 11 is nuts. The Colts being at 11 is crazy. I don't get that one at all. Especially if Anthony Richardson's playing. How can the Colts be the 11th best team in the NFL when more than likely they're going to be starting Gardner Minshew? And if they don't start Gardner Minshew, they'll be starting Anthony Richardson.
There are many reasons you can point to why Aaron Rodgers maybe struggled last year, okay? So I'm not saying that he's not so great. He was just MVP back-to-back years. I understand all of this, but I just got to see it with the Jets before I grant them the rank of 6. That's all I'm saying.
I agree with you because at the end of the day, there's still the Jets, Jets, and the Jets are going to jet, even with Aaron Rodgers. We have to see it work. We have to see if all of that can kind of come together for them to be in the top 6. They have a roster.
Yeah.
The roster looks nice. And also we talked about it, you're banking on young players that in year one were stars.
I was not expecting to start this video with Jets talk. I'm not going to lie to anybody here, but I think the Jets will be good. The problem the Jets run into is that they are in an incredibly difficult division. You know, the Jets have the Bills to deal with, have the Dolphins to deal with, and then you always have the Patriots, who, you know, the Patriots are kind of on a downswing, but still.
Year 2, that's where the film's out. That's where the book's out. That's where people plan for you now. And if you can break through year 2, then you're probably going to be here a while. If you can't, we've seen it happen a ton of times.
Ooh, how about the Lions at 8? Okay,
Grit.
a little frisky there. Cowboys at 9, disgusting, pathetic, horrible. And then you got to, you keep going down this list. You don't get to an NFC South team until the Atlanta Falcons at 20. Now, I should be clear about this. Connor Orr is infatuated with the Bijan Robinson pick. He absolutely loves it.
Yeah, I mean, this is like this whole thing is nuts. I mean, you can't have Seattle underneath Atlanta. You know, like this whole thing is a mess. I mean, Minnesota, what they went. I mean, I'm not saying that Minnesota was as good as their record last year. Well, what they went 13 games, and now you're going to have them all of a sudden one spot ahead of the Falcons. Like this list doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know if he's ranking like just the draft or what, but I don't understand. And this kind of goes to my larger conversation. Like, this guy works for Sports Illustrated, right? I think that's what T-Bob said. So there's a Sports Illustrated guy who's allowed to have his own power rankings that get posted. And how can his power rankings be this off and this just out of control? To have Indianapolis almost in the top 10, Minnesota in the 19, Atlanta 20, the Saints at 27. Like, I mean, this is nuts to me. This is indefensible.
He thinks it was maybe one of the best picks of the entire draft. And then he goes on to talk about what he granted Atlanta the rank of San Francisco, saying they're building something reminiscent of San Francisco where you don't really need a quarterback to be successful. That feels like a huge reach to me.
I'll tell you this, he has Denver at 28. If Denver has a worse record than Chicago, the Rams, Carolina, Atlanta, I will eat my hand live on stream.
Maybe not as much reach. They do have some pretty nice weapons, okay? If now you're combining Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, like, okay, I kind of see where you're getting at there. But ultimately, with Desmond Ridder, I'm again, wait and see. So he's got Atlanta 20, then Carolina 23, already thinking that Bryce Young and those weapons, and then the New Orleans Saints down at 27 out of 32 teams.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Believing
that's crazy.
Stuck in purgatory.
I mean, I would actually, if I'm not going to have the Saints number 1 on this, I would have the Panthers over the Falcons, actually, because when you look at their roster and look at what they've done, you bring in Miles Sanders, Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Hayden Hurst, you bring in some real weapons for your number.
Yeah, those guys suck. I mean, like, those guys are bad. Those guys are not weapons. Those are just bodies. Okay. I will say Atlanta. The reason I had Atlanta up is that Atlanta does have weapons. Like, Drake London is a legitimate weapon. Bijan Robinson, no reason not to be excited about Bijan. Kyle Pitts, bad first year, but we know the talent he has. The Adam Thielen, the DJ Chark, the Hayden Hurst, like you're just filling a roster there. You know, I will give, and then Bryce Young, who the hell knows, right? Like, I think Desmond Ridder, if he just does what he did last year, oh, all right. Like, that's a guy who it's like, yeah, you could probably go 500 with a guy like that. Bryce Young, we have no idea how that's going to take.
Number 1 overall quarterback, and we know they have some guys, Derek Brown, he's one of the very few guys that got his 5th-year option picked up because everybody seems to be getting that decline. They signed Shai Tuttle away from the Saints. Brian Burns is still on that team. Shaq Thompson's still on that team. Von Bell's now on that team. J.C. Horn's going to be healthy on that team. So, like, if you gave me a roster to pick from, I would go Carolina actually over Atlanta. But there's no way he's got the Colts 11 on here.
Yeah,
that's a big question mark for the Colts.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's definitely the one that sticks out the most to me, especially when you look at the odds, right? Like, you again, let's go to Caesars. But if you look at the odds of the Colts for the Super Bowl, the Colts are down here with the worst teams in the NFL. I'm going to trust Caesars over this Connor Orr guy. Like, imagine if he had Washington in the top 10 or Washington at 11. People are like, what the hell are you talking about? You know, like, what? How could you possibly do this? Like, you know, Denver, he had as one of the worst teams in the NFL. Caesars has Denver kind of middle of the pack. Like, there can't be this much disparity. There can't be this much difference in these rankings. Let's look at the Colts. Like, look at these odds. If he thinks the Colts are the 11th best team in the NFL, and Caesars has the Colts 5-1 just to win their division, he should be all over this. He should be mortgaging his house on this.
They were bad
No.
a year
Real
ago,
bad.
and I don't care like who was in, who was out. And you're drafting Anthony Richardson, and we've talked so many times long enough about what his career potentially could be and could not be. So that's extremely high on this list. And the Bears at 26, right ahead of the Saints as well.
That's nuts. The Bears are ass. Don't forget, guys, the Bears had the first overall pick. The Bears were the worst team in the NFL. And now, like, the only reason they didn't take the first pick in the draft is because they traded it. Like, do not get that mixed up. People have seemed to forget that. People have seemed to forget just how bad the Bears are, because for some reason people kind of have this like love affair with Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields, what he did last year with his legs was incredible. I mean, the guy made a legitimate run at no pun intended, at leading the NFL in rushing. I mean, he was amazing, no doubt about that, running the football from the quarterback position. But no matter how you slice it, the Bears were the worst team in the NFL, had the first overall pick, and now this guy's got them ahead of the Saints.
It's definitely some disrespect to the Saints here from.
Hell yeah, it is.
I think that a lot of it is based off of an offense last year that was very boring and non-threatening at all.
Yeah, no doubt.
And we talked all about the philosophy of last season and how bad it was, how kind of just, again,
for sure,
non-threatening, boring, old school that it was. But there is no excuse, right? Like, there is no excuse not to change that this year, right? If the old excuse was you had Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton and maybe they couldn't handle certain things that you wanted to do, well, now you went and paid, $30+ million for a quarterback. You went and got Derek Carr, a guy who looks like a top 5 quarterback in the NFC right now.
Oh, he's definitely a top 5 quarterback in the NFC. I mean, that's a good point by T-Bob. You can't. The Saints did go get a guy. Like when you look at Desmond Ridder, Kyle Trask, Bryce Young, and then Derek Carr. Derek Carr is levels above those guys, way ahead of those guys. Derek Carr is an established quarterback. Whatever you think about him as far as like, is he an MVP level quarterback? Is he just an above average level quarterback? Whatever. He's at least in that conversation. And the Saints, like T-Bob said, do not have an excuse now to be as pedestrian as they were last year on offense. Michael Thomas should be coming back. Chris Olave's in that second season. The Saints do have weapons. They do have a roster. We've made some moves. We went and got, in the draft, we went and filled some immediate holes on the defensive line. Our defense should be better. We have some established weapons now. And now we have a guy who you can turn the offense over to. There's no reason the Saints should not, one, win the division, but compete for the NFC, which is crazy to think about. But when you say you have Philadelphia, okay, obviously the best team in the NFL, or in the NFC. San Francisco, I would say, is the second best, but they have Brock Purdy at quarterback. And I know people are going to be like, oh, well, Brock Purdy was good last year. Was he? Was he good last year? He played 7 games. All right, and he ran an offense that Kyle Shanahan has that almost anyone can run. When Brock Purdy had to win the game, I was not impressed. And everyone knows I covered the Niners a lot last year because of the Super Bowl ticket I had on them. Brock Purdy and Derek Carr. Derek Carr is better than Brock Purdy. Okay, no doubt about that. So then you have like Dallas. Is Derek Carr that much worse than Dak Prescott? No, Dak Prescott would have led the NFL in interceptions last year if he didn't miss a handful of games. All right. And Dak Prescott's probably the second best quarterback in the NFC, according to pundits. You could make a real case that Derek Carr is the second best quarterback in the NFC. Jalen Hurts, Derek Carr. The next step there of Derek Carr, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, they're all the same. They're all the same guy. So the Saints are coming into this year with an improved defense, better weapons than last year on offense, and arguably the second best quarterback in the conference. So they better win the division, and they better make a run at winning the conference.
There is no excuse not to push, not to take chances, not to engage in risk. You did not pay Derek Carr all this money to have him come in and run the same offense that you ran last year with Jameis Winston.
That won't happen.
Dalton. So
that won't happen.
No, Pete Carmichael. Now is the time to push yourself creatively, to engage in risk taking, and to try to make the Saints dangerous again.
Oh yeah.
But Connor's not believing. We'll see.
Chris Mart. Yeah. Did I read that right? Marinez in the chat. To be honest, Carolina's weapons that Hester just named don't scare me, and I can understand that.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm not in the chat, but they don't. They're just people. Like, does DJ Chark scare you? Does Hayden Hurst scare you? Does Adam Thielen scare you? Does any of that scare you? It's kind of crazy how much people put this emphasis on unknown, which I guess is like the gambler's fallacy. You know, we don't know what Bryce Young can do. We don't know what Anthony Richardson can do. So some people do put them on like this crazy high pedestal. But the chance that Bryce Young is even average this year is real bad. I would guess Bryce Young's going to struggle. And he may end up being good. But to just claim that Bryce Young is a weapon when he hasn't played in the NFL is nuts to me.
That thought process, because some of them are old, some of them have been
injured.
Ass.
Some of them have never been good.
As far as what you're looking for to get a rookie quarterback confidence, I think those are good weapons for him. Like, I think he can actually trust those weapons. I think they can be successful together because they understand the game, right? They might not be at their peak performance, but what it's going to do is it's going to help out a young quarterback. And so I can get behind what you're saying.
I'll put it to you like this. Who's got better weapons? DJ Chark, or who are better weapons? DJ Chark and Adam Thielen, or Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? But nobody is saying Kyle Trask is going to be comfortable and build confidence because he has good weapons, right? No one's saying that because everyone knows Kyle Trask sucks ass, okay? But because of the unknown with Bryce Young, it's like, oh man, DJ Chark and Hayden Hurst are really going to help him develop. Giving a bad quarterback serviceable weapons doesn't do much, okay? All we're doing with Bryce Young is we're believing this hype. You can see what I'm saying between the Panthers and the Bucks and their kind of the weapons they have. You could say the same thing Jacob is saying for the Panthers, for the Bucks, but no one is, because that gambler's fallacy is out the window. The gambler's fallacy of the unknown is out the window. We know about Kyle Trask, right? We know about the Tampa Bay quarterbacks. So no one's saying that. No one is saying, I don't know. I mean, Tampa Bay's got a pretty decent roster.
You know, Adam Thielen's not going to terrify you, right? He's never been a number one. I understand that, but he's a good veteran player that's had a lot of success in the NFL. Like when DJ Chark is healthy, what does he do? He takes the top off the defense. Yeah. Miles Sanders had a really good year a year ago. Hayden Hurst had one of his best years, if not his best year, a year ago. He's a veteran player. So I think they tried to surround Bryce Young, knowing they were going to go quarterback with pieces. Now, you might not ever get to the peak, but I don't think you're going to fall off a cliff either. And that's what Carolina kind of feels like offensively. Defensively, they've got Jimmys and Joes. Like, defensively, that should make you nervous. They've got game changers.
Yeah, defensively, they're good. For sure. I was listening to an interview with Matt Rule last year, former coach of the Panthers. And Matt Rule is saying, like, low-key, the roster is really good. Like, he was basically saying, like, I put together a really good roster, and he definitely talked about the defense. And he kind of mentioned that all they were missing was a quarterback, and that they asked him what he would have done differently. And he said, the only thing I would have done differently is I would have been more aggressive in going and getting a quarterback. He thought he had more time. He did not. And if he could go back, he was like, I would have went in free agency and just got a guy, right? So Jacob's right there. Carolina does have a solid roster defensively.
Changers.
Wow, just
Okay, so watching the whole video, it seems like what they meant was, will the Saints exceed the Sports Illustrated's expectations and win the division? Yes, for sure. In that context, they will exceed Connor or whatever the guy's name was, his expectation. But as far as Saints fans, like as far as, and I know a tremendous amount of people who watch this channel are Saints fans, we have to expect, like, if this team fails, okay, let's say this team does not win the division. Let's say this team is 500 or a game below 500. That the only way that will happen is if there's two avenues. And one of them, I don't even think it's really can happen. One avenue is a continued failure of Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael. That can absolutely happen, ladies and gentlemen. The other avenue is a failure of Derek Carr. But I don't think Derek Carr can regress to the level that he would be that bad. So the onus of this season is 100% on Pete and Dennis Allen. They have been given. Mickey Loomis, I was talking with Saints fans last night. We're all feeling pretty damn good about the draft. Mickey Loomis did what he had to do. Restructured Michael Thomas, did some good things in the draft, got some good free agents. When you got Derek Carr, good job, Mickey. Okay? Good job, Mickey. So now it's up to Dennis and Pete to put it together to where our offense and everything doesn't look like last year. I expect the Saints to not only win the division, but I expect the Saints to win more than 10 games and compete for the NFC. Let me know in the comments below what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Am I off base here? Will the Saints struggle? Am I downplaying Carolina, Atlanta, and Tampa too much? Spoiler alert, I am not. Those three teams will be total ass. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are the Saints a top 3, top 4, top 5 team in the NFC? Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next one.